the way, just so you know, Mike Abdul is coming on DSS, December 21. Yes, DSS. Yes, think what you want. But why? But in the meantime, let's talk about gerontology. Oh, that's not what's on the... Oh, sorry. A gerontologist studies all aspects of the aging process and works to support the needs and wants of older adults. That's what this conversation is about. Sometimes in this season, it's a time to go to old people and it's the time to run away from old people. Let's talk about that this morning with Dr. Olutoyin Akande-Ajala, who is a gerontologist. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
While having a conversation with my colleague about this discussion, my colleague here said something we all know, and that's the fact that older people get abandoned easy. And there are no homes for older people here as they are in other climes. How is that a problem? Do you agree with her?
Yes, okay. So the first thing is I have to correct you. I'm actually not a gerontologist.
Okay.
I'm a geriatrician.
What's the difference?
So the difference is a geriatrician is a doctor that looks after older people. So we're physicians for older people. You know, the way you have a cardiologist that looks after the heart, there's physicians, you know, an endocrinologist or a chest physician. I'm a geriatrician. So I'm a physician, yes. So we all do the same. So in the UK where I trained, we all do the same training. And then you decide which subspecialty of general internal medicine you want to specialize in. So part of geriatric medicine is also gerontology, where you have to know about the physiology, you have to know about the demographics, you have to know about really everything that encompasses elderly care.
Okay.
You know, including elderly health care.
How do we give that attention, that much significant enough attention to treating or taking care of the older people?
Well, if we haven't been doing it up till now, we should, because, you know, the statistics are actually a little bit alarming. Right now in Nigeria, we have over 9 million is what the stats tell us in the elderly population. By 2050, which is just over 25 years' time, that population is going to increase by 500% to over 30 million elderly people. We don't have the wherewithal at the moment to look after all of them. I'm one of 9 geriatricians in Nigeria, and I only nine trained geriatricians in Nigeria. I can tell you I have a very huge workload because the population actually understand what geriatric medicine is about. So if you are in that position where you have an elderly parent or an elderly relative, you look for a geriatrician. So I'm being looked for.
Now, the figures you just gave, well, you used the word, so I will just use the same word you use. The figures are alarming.
Yes, they are.
And it's going to increase by 500%.
500% at least.
Is it that people are living longer, living better, and therefore living longer?
Yes, they are. They are. So by 2050, I mean, I'm going to be 55 now, so that's 25 years' time, I'll be 80. So I should hope that I'll be one of those numbers.
Still alive and strong.
Still alive and strong. You know, as long as you're able to do the right things, you know, when you're younger, you should
Which is what this is all about.
Exactly. You get to that age, I mean, and that's part of the care of the elderly as well, because what we have to do is we have to ensure that our elderly don't end up where the majority of the 80-year-olds are now, quite frail. So, you know, I always call it like a failure to thrive. You know, with the pediatric age group, children that are not growing well, they call that a failure to thrive. In our demographic, the people in the older age group now have actually failed to thrive, the majority of them. They're the exceptions. They're the fantastic 90-something-year-olds. I have them in my practice. But the majority of people I see, from the age of 70 really, they haven't really looked after themselves very well when they were younger.
Why is that?
Well, I suppose, first of all, it's awareness, isn't it? Because, you know, I mean, 30 years ago, who was talking about healthy aging 30 years ago? So you can imagine that the people who are in their 70s, 80s now, unless they were particularly obsessive, didn't really know about healthy aging. They didn't know, for instance, about, who was talking about dietary regulations and things like that.
If we can really bring this home, because back then, no one spoke about healthy aging, you taking care of yourself. The only thing is, everyone is saying, I'm going to have children who are going to take care of me.
Yes, yes.
When I grow old.
Yes, yes. And I don't think those children at that time also realized the burden that they would have when their parents are old. So my generation is called the sandwich generation. You know, that generation that we have elderly parents that we're looking after,
as well as
and
your
young children who... You know, for my age group, okay, at least they're still in university, but we are looking after, and that burden is heavy for many people, physically, mentally, and financially heavy.
Since people are living longer, we don't want them frail and dependent when they are old.
Yes.
So where do we start and how do we start? What do we eat? What things do we do so that should God decide to preserve us into our 80s or even 90s, we're not dependent on anybody?
Right, okay, so really, with my establishment, we've got a conference that we've held annually since 2019 called the Healthier Aging Conference. That conference was born off the back of what I saw. Because what I saw when I came to Nigeria in 2018 was that people weren't doing as well as I thought. And I always say when I meet elderly people, I always say, if you were one of the people I met when I first came, I'd probably have gone back to the UK, but then that wasn't what I met. For instance, dementia, it's so prevalent in our community. I had no idea. I thought it was a Western world problem. And I dare say that we probably have more of it here than in the UK, where I trained and where I worked for years, And what we need to do now is we need to actually just take those of us who are younger, take that bull by the horns and do what we have to do. The government is not going to help us. You talked about what should we do. I'll get to the crux of it, lifestyle. What we're talking about today, lifestyle changes. So when you talk about food, I grew up in what I call the sugar. We were the sugar babies. We had sugar in everything. There was sugar in tea, sugar in gari, sugar in everything. Even beans.
And yam.
And yam, and corn. I found out the other day because and there was sugar in the corn. And we know, for instance, now that sugar is one of the #1 aging agents in the world. You have to cut out sugar, just to make it more startling for people, so everyone knows what you're supposed to do. So for women, by the time you take 6 teaspoons of sugar a day, for men 9. I actually don't agree with the men. I think men should also just stick to 6. By the time you take that every day from the age of 40, you're reducing your lifespan for some people by about 14 years, just because of the amount of inflammation it causes to the body and the propensity to really bring on those chronic diseases, diabetes, cancer, obesity, all these things.
Please don't call them like that.
I have to be frank.
The way you're calling them, they're even more scary than they actually are.
Well, people should be scared. It's just one of those things. And then, obviously, every woman wants to look young and all of that. If you're piling on the sugar, by the time you've taken your first cup of tea, you've taken 1 cup of gari, you've taken your coffee later, you've had, and our teaspoons, the teaspoons we use are not when they say 6 teaspoons, they mean 6 level teaspoons. We hip the teaspoons up. So that 1 teaspoon is already like about 3 teaspoons. So if you keep on having that and piling that on, then you are actually reducing your lifespan. So in case you say, oh, yes, well, if I reduce my lifespan, then I'll die, isn't it? And that's it. It's not just that. You're affecting your heart, your kidneys, your brain, So just in case you are one of those people who does have the genes to live longer, you might just live longer in a frail state.
And nobody wants that.
Let's agree, first of all, you're coming back.
So cut out sugar.
Wait, first, you're coming back, because 7 minutes is not going to cut it. Yes. But so far you've only spoken about food, and you've just touched one item. Sugar.
Yes, sugar. Yes.
Let's stick with sugar for a while. Let me turn my back. Sweet tooth.
Yes, which I have.
Cakes. Oh.
Because I grew up, I'm a sugar baby.
Cakes.
Yes.
Chocolates.
Yes, sweets.
etc. Maybe I should just get out of this studio because
Rub it in.
Yes. Yes. So I'm one of those people that likes all those things.
So you are in the same WhatsApp group?
I have a proper sweet tooth, but we have to do it. So what we have to do, I believe in having everything in moderation, but sugar is actually probably one of those things that we should try and cut out in totality.
Altogether.
Whoa. But then the odd treat can't help, it can't hurt us, I think, isn't it? I mean, having the odd cake now and then. But, cutting out sugar as in super added, we're putting that white stuff in our tea, coffee, all those things. It's an acquired taste. And sugar is actually addictive. You think you need it, but you don't. You've got to do that 21-day fast. Cut out sugar for 21 days. By 21 days, you'll actually realize you didn't need it. Yes.
You hear?
Why are you looking at me?
Just saying.
I did that, so I know it can work. My dad is 86. I remember the day he told me he was stopping sugar. I was like, wow. And he did. He stopped it. He just stopped sugar.
But
completely.
For some people, cutting it out might be like almost to them like cutting your face. So what are the alternatives? Honey is one, right?
No, honey is also sugar.
Oh.
Because it's also very sweet.
It's also natural.
Well, let's cut it out.
Cut out honey as well.
Cut out honey.
Why don't you do... So what I did, because I knew I could not cut everything out. I knew I couldn't. So what I did was I actually started having... So, instead of having 1 teaspoon, I just have 1 level teaspoon. Then I went to half a teaspoon. By the time I got to half a teaspoon, putting more, it actually tasted off. I didn't like it. It gets too sweet. So if you tail it down, don't just cut it. I couldn't do the cutting off completely. I had to actually just tail it down. When you're weaning yourself off something.
Trying to imagine
you're weaning yourself off
without sugar.
I'm trying to imagine
Try
coffee without.
So do it.
I don't take coffee, just so you know.
Okay.
I'm just trying to imagine taking coffee without any sweetener.
Black coffee, no sugar, no milk.
Gosh, that's medication.
For me, coffee with honey would be...
Yeah, okay, we've talked about the food. What else?
I'm going to just touch because there isn't that much time. So I'm just talking the important things. Cut out sugar and then regular physical activity, exercise.
Okay.
That is in fact, that's probably number 1. So cut out sugar. If we're going to talk about 3 things today, cut out sugar and regular physical exercise. That is proven beyond all doubt. All scientific research points to the fact that if you work out, don't even work out, just go on a walk every day, moderate intensity exercise. So a brisk walk. Start with 15 minutes of a brisk walk every day, and that would reduce your chances of getting all these chronic diseases. It helps with blood pressure. So if you can, do that regular physical exercise, you're going to bring your blood pressure levels down. It might not be down to the point where you don't need any medication forever, but at least it helps. It helps with things like obesity. It helps with reducing your risk of having cancer, diabetes. It strengthens you, not just physically, but mentally and cognitively. It reduces the risk of having dementia in old age by more than 30%. Regular physical exercise, for me, that is key. I don't even joke with that at all.
Okay. The third one.
So the third one I'm actually going to talk about, because I've talked about sugar, I've talked about mobility. I want to talk about finances. As you get older, please look after your finances. So, we talked about, at least my parents' generation, not my parents in particular, but their generation, believed that as long as you have children, you'll be well looked after. Not always the case. I must say that at least with my patients, I am super impressed with the fact that their children go all out as they can go. I'm not so sure that our own children will do the same for us, because our children are are now, you know, that Gen Z generation of, so you didn't think you were going to go old. Yeah, you did. What were you doing? Were you saving? What were you doing? Did you have me just so that I can look after you in old age? Is that why I'm here? You know, they'll ask you questions. You know, those homes that you said are not available, they actually are. There are homes, there are care homes. There are care homes in Lagos, you know, Ikorodu on the mainland. There's some towards the Aja, Ekpe side.
Are there as many as 9 geriatricians in Lagos?
You mean as many care homes? Yes, there are more care homes. You don't have to be a geriatrician to have a care home. Okay. I have a hospital. I built the first private geriatric hospital in Nigeria. But yeah, I mean, for that you have to be a specialist, you have to be a geriatrician. But to have a care home, you just have to have
How do you
knowledge.
get rid of the stigma of taking your older folks,
your parents, for instance? Yeah. So that is just one of the things that is going to evolve with time, and it has started evolving.
Exactly.
Because I have gone to visit, you know, as in, you know, there are people who are abroad, you know, with the Jakba. There are people who are abroad and their parents are at home, like with the carer. That has failed for various reasons. Yeah. They've had to look for options and they've had to put their parents in a care home.
At what time does anyone watching you right now, listening to you, begin to consider seeing a geriatrician? So
in the definition of it, so a physician specifically trained to look after older people. In Nigeria, it would be 65 and above. Okay. In the UK, it's 70 and above. Okay. Because, you know, the UK at the moment has a bigger elderly population than we have in Nigeria. That is going to change in 2050. In 2050, we'll have a bigger elderly population.
Anyway.
So it's 65 and above.
Former President Obasanjo says we're going to write to about quite a number, 500-something million people in Nigeria. I don't even want to think about that right now. I want to thank you very much for your time. Please, promise you're going to come back.
I'll come back.
Good. Dr. Olutoyin.
The whole world heard you.
Yes. Dr. Olutoyin Akode-Ajala is a geriatrician, and thank you so much for your time. I think the next conversation we're going to have is healthy aging. We'll get to that one. Thank you again for your time.
You're welcome.
The home stretch is about now. We'll come back.